personal growth and the leader. Let me ask you, how does poor leadership within an organization affect a culture? There is a major leadership deficit today. How do you fix it? And leadership is about one thing and one thing. What is that? Stay tuned for your answers.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, greetings, everybody, and welcome. I have another great show. I think we've had like 5 great shows that I am going to learn from, and I think you're going to learn from. So welcome to Essential Leadership Skills, the podcast. Our guests today are Lou and Sherri of the Lou Everett Group. Now, they are known for their highly effective coaching, teaching, and speaking on the importance of personal growth and how it impacts and influences your organization and influences you as a leader. Now, with more than 4 decades, now I had to stop and count that on my fingers, 4 decades, so that's a lot of time. With more than 4 decades of combined experience in training, coaching, and leadership, they also have received training and mentoring from some of the best minds and most well-known successful people on the planet. For example, Tony Robbins, my all-time favorite, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, John Maxwell, Jack Canfield, Paul Martinelli, and they are certified leadership coaches and corporate trainers. You know what? They're here to transform today's leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Essential Leadership Skills, the podcast. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Glenn. Nice to see you. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Really glad to have you. I've been very blessed. I've gotten the opportunity to get a hold of some really great people, and you guys' resume just outshines almost everyone that we come across. So I want to start off with a quick question for you. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's tattletale time. I don't know. What is it that most people do not know about either you, Sherri, or you, Lou, or about your company that they should know about the Leverett Group or about each other?
That's a good question. Yeah. There's a couple, I think, that would be advantageous for everybody to know. You want to take the first one? I think the coaches one was.
I was thinking about this, and you know what comes to mind really is that we are coaches that have coaches. Mm-hmm. We're trainers that have trainers that are with us, and I think that is so key to really make sure that people understand, because there are so many coaches out now, which is great because I think we do need it. Mm-hmm. However, some are just not taking that extra step to make sure that they're continuing and growing. Right. And, so that's so important to know that, yes, we have, we're coaches and trainers that actually have coaches and trainers, and we actually walk the walk. We're not one of those experts in the field that just say it and not do it ourselves. Right. So that is so dire. So we're in the field, we're doing it, and we would not share with our partners and our clients things or tasks if we haven't done it ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we continue to do that.
Yeah. Having coaches ourselves to help us is essential. It would make sense to preach that and not practice it ourselves, right? That's one thing everyone needs to understand, is that the coach needs to invest in themselves as well. The second is that we teach and train and we speak a lot on toxicity in the workplace, and how leaders have a full responsibility and frankly a burden to really lead their people in a way, and we'll get more into that with influence and how they can do that. So we have experienced firsthand the negativity, the toxicity, the negative leadership firsthand in our corporate jobs and our corporate responsibilities over the years. Mm-hmm. We have seen it and have experienced the challenge of trying to make those adjustments and those changes. And we've failed a lot along the way and learned a lot on the way too. So those are 2 big ones that I think everyone should be fully aware of about us and what it is that we do.
It's been my experience working with other trainers and leaders that they get to the point where they say, well, I'm the leader now. I don't need coaching.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right.
I don't need that type of work. And it becomes really kind of difficult, because when you get someone into that, it becomes a whole nother issue.
Sure does.
I'm testing you because I'm going to see if your favorite is my favorite. Who's been your favorite mentor so far?
Favorite mentor? Wow. Over the years, my goodness. That's difficult because I've had some, for me, I've had mentors that are very well known, and then I have some that you wouldn't know them if you walked into them. So I would say if I had to narrow it down, I'll say to two of them. There was a mentor of mine when I was in moved my way up the ladder in the IT in the corporate space in a leadership level, that he told me straight up, listen, this is challenging and you need to fully accept responsibility for the people that you lead. And he mentored me along the way and coached me to become a better leader as I moved up the ranks. Most don't do that. So that's one that's in the general space that I think really impacted me over the years, because he tried to set the example. And when he failed, he said he failed. And he helped me learn from my failure too. So when I messed up, which when I did, it was always a big situation because I messed up bad, had to learn like we all do. It's a learned thing. Leadership is learned, not automatic. That he coached me through that as opposed to judging me about it. Secondly, I would say that John Maxwell has certainly been another one of my favorite mentors, because he's not just a mentor, he's a leader in what it is that he does, and he values people. And finally getting a chance to meet him after working with him over the years, it's just who you see is what you get. And I value that big time. So those are my two anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely, John Maxwell has definitely helped me through, my near-death experience and our experience that we went through. So definitely the transformation has definitely been impactful since diving in and really going through John Maxwell and going through that. But other than that, my mentor of mine that I admire is actually Mother Teresa. She's been, the more I find out and the more stories about her, and when she was alive, I was still alive, and I didn't take advantage of that. And now that she's passed, and now it's just like, wow, like what happened? And so, when that's kind of inspiring, just her stories and what she did, and really for the love of people and giving value.
Yeah, she didn't have a positional title.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She just was a leader in what she did by action and her deeds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of find it interesting that you picked Mother Teresa and John Maxwell, because I believe they both operate from this thing of giving.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If I can give all I can, somebody's got to explain to me how it's possible that John Maxwell has written all the books that he's written.
Yes.
Just explain that to me for starters.
Yeah.
Then you have to ask yourself, how did Mother Teresa look at all the pain?
Yeah.
And yet so full of love and giving.
Yeah.
But those are some of the lessons you look and you get when you pay attention in personal growth, I think.
It's true.
I mean, look at that. Tell me about toxicity in the workplace and how it is an infection. And we're talking about toxicity from the leaders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, see, even the excuse of, from a leadership perspective at the C-suite level or whatever leadership role you may have, the excuse of, I didn't know this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible excuse, because why don't you know it's happening?
Mm-hmm. Or they downplay it.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's not that bad.
It's the employee's fault.
It's like, yeah, or it's the employee's fault. It's like, oh, it's really not that bad. It's not that toxic. That's not, I'm like, yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the sad part.
I think it's important for us to identify and kind of define what toxicity is.
Right.
Like, what's a toxic work environment?
Mm-hmm.
You know that you work in a toxic work environment when Sunday evening, before you have to go to work the next day.
Yeah.
That you have knots in your stomach and you have anxiety because you dread walking into the office, not knowing how you're going to be treated that day. Yeah. Working in an environment where your leader, your manager, your direct report, whatever you want to call it, is someone who makes you feel small, that you cannot complete your job, or if you do, you have to do certain things. Almost, what you're asked to do seems almost superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that if you do not accomplish those goals, you're going to be yelled at, You're going to be written up. You're going to be talked to. Now, I'm not just talking about the general consensus here, because obviously there has to be consequences for any employee that's not fulfilling their obligation. We're talking beyond that. In other words, we're dictating to our employees as opposed to leading our employees to success. See, dictating a person to success is very different than leading them to success. Unfortunately, many managers are not equipped and know how to do that. So toxicity can certainly kill. We've experienced variations of that over the years.
We have. I know when I was married, my ex-wife, I don't care how good the weekend was, come Sunday night, she was always getting physically sick, preparing for Monday at work.
Right.
And not that she didn't know what was coming. She knew exactly what was coming.
Yeah, that's it.
And it just was a very bad situation. I don't think leaders understood not just that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but the long-term things of it. Sherri, you mentioned earlier that you had a struggle with your health. Was that because of the toxicity of your leader coming down to you? And how did you battle through that?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, leadership at the time was more focused on the bottom line than they were valuing their employees anymore. So it definitely eroded the culture from when it first started, to the point that it was expectations of working 70 plus hours just to keep everything going and keep, keep your metrics up, and also the verbal abuse. And unfortunately, it landed me in the hospital in the ICU for 10 days with a rare disease. And thankfully, with the good doctors here in North Carolina, they were able to diagnose, and I was able to survive with very minimal damages. But it was a very dire situation in a sense, because my body was so go, and a crash and burn, and our bodies can't handle that long term. Right. And it was a very high stressful, high work environment, which I was used to. And I take accountability for working as hard as I did. I enjoyed what I did. But like I said, the expectations of working 70 plus hours, as well as that verbal abuse, that's just uncalled for. And unfortunately, that's not the only company that has done that. And we need to share that message out that there are companies out there that just don't realize it, or they do and they just look the other way because they they have this money fascination. And if you take a step back and honestly think about it, how much money that you can actually save by treating your employees the way that they need to be, you'll actually make more money by doing that instead of beating over the head and let's see if we can wring out, just one more sale or whatever. Yeah. And it's just unfortunate. So that's why we're very passionate on what we do and sharing that, because we've been on both sides. We've been in environments that have been very encouraging, very non-toxic, very fun, and we worked our butt off and we had fun doing it. Right. Yes, there were stresses, but nothing compared to when you're in a toxic work environment where you feel sick every day. Your employees around you are just nothing but negative, even though you try so hard to be positive. People around you are getting sick constantly. I mean, talk about your chronic colds, and this is beyond cold. This was stress when it takes into a physical manifestation. And I know lots of other people, the more times we share this out, the more it is relatable to people going, oh yeah, I was always getting sick the night before, when I went to work, or it's just so common, and we need to talk about that.
Many don't. We can probably bring this up at some point, but Sherri and I are husband and wife. Yeah. And so when she went through that, it was a very eye-opening experience for her and for me, because you see, the doctors didn't know if she was going to die or not. They had no idea. There was a possibility that she would make it, and so that was a very eye-opening experience, because we knew, and she knew, we talked about it a lot, the environment that she was working in, and we had been trained for so many years on what good leadership is and how to lead a team, how to influence a team to want to work with you and for you instead of having to work for you. And when they want to, they do more. And so being in an environment like that, not only was that toxic, but was even more toxic in environments like this is the true leadership in that company just not being open to change, not being open to the realization of we need to make some kind of an adjustment here so that we lead our people. One very simple adjustment: equip your managers and your leaders, equip your employees with the tools necessary to be solid leaders in what it is that they do, and to treat people in a way that we realize that without them, we have no one to lead.
Well, that actually hits my question, and you answered it, so we probably don't need to stay with it, but we can have toxic environments, and we all know, though we should all know, stress kills.
Yeah, sure does.
And when you create that stress that's killing, how do we fix that, though? So you said equip people with the tools they need. Can you give us a little bit more detail on that? Maybe even another thought on how do we fix this toxic environment? How do we fix the leaders that are presenting this toxic environment?
Right. Well, it comes right down to we can't fix them. Leaders have to fix themselves, right? And use the resources, though, around you. We're here to help, to provide the necessary awareness and direction that a leader needs to go in to help strengthen their teams, and where teams need to go to strengthen their teams. But equipping is a big thing. As an example, we have a chapter we have a principle that we use in our empowerment leadership method, and it's based on 10 principles that we have developed over the last 4.5 decades. And one of those principles talks about equipping, and we use the analogy of a bow and an arrow. We need to equip our teams with both the bow and the arrow, because you see the combination of those tools create the effectiveness that we're looking for. And we have to train them on how to use the bow and the arrow. So they're not just equipped, but they're trained. They're mentored and coached along the way to use it effectively to not just achieve an employee satisfaction level, but production, and in turn affects the bottom line, which is very important in any business. We can't overshadow the bottom line, where people are in business because of succeeding and making money and much of other visions and missions, depending on what their focus is. But the people are necessary, and but the right people are even more necessary. So we can't fix leaders. Leaders have to decide. They realize that I've got to fix myself. Become aware. That's where it begins. That all starts and ends with you as a leader. That's where it starts. That's the me principle in our 10 principles.
I like that. I had another question for you, but this is really something I think people should really kind of get a hold of. Tell us about your core basic program that you would bring into a company to help them get the leaders to see that they need to start with themselves and train themselves and get better. Tell us about that program. I put up on the screen, but you need to tell us just in case people don't see it.
Sure.
Your website. So start with that first. Tell us your website, spell it all out for everybody so they can get there in case they can't see it.
Sure. Well, our foundation and what we've created is the empowerment leadership system. Everything that we train on and we use for teaching or coaching is based upon 10 principles that every leader must follow to lead with influence. Now, those principles aren't just words, right? There's a lot to it. So we're probably going to build up to all of it. But those core principles is what we bring into any company, especially if we're working with leadership and working with leaders. Obviously, we want to talk with them first to find out what's your challenges first. And we have a way to do that with surveying, to be able to survey employees to really see the culture, without the rose-colored glasses that leadership might have on, to see what really is the challenge here. And then we can take that, and by using our empowerment leadership method, we now begin to create a customized program for that specific situation. Because every company is different, every culture is different, but there are foundational pieces that need to remain. And that's where those 10 principles come in, to be able to now create a customized plan and program for a company after we have surveyed and realized what those real rooted challenges are. Otherwise, leadership can come to us. This has happened before. I need you guys to come in here and do communication training.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. We can come in there and do communication training with anybody. But why?
What's the culture?
What exactly? What's the culture?
Exactly. What happened?
What happened?
What
That's the
happened?
next question. Well, what's happened that caused you to need communication training?
Yeah.
There's always something.
Yeah.
Well, why did that happen? Now, you got to start getting into more of the, we can go in and teach a half-day workshop or a day workshop on communication, or sometimes we've been asked to do 2 hours.
Right.
Well, 2 hours is an event, right? That's not transformation. It's not, things don't change because of one event. It can help and get it started, but it happens over time. And so you're not going to get to the root of the problem with a 2-hour workshop. Right. I hate to tell you. And so we come in and we verify what that culture is like, what really is the root of the challenges that they're facing, whether it's attrition, employee attrition, which is a big one. Why are employees leaving? I give them everything. Okay, well, let's find out. So all of that plays into, we have a system, a program, but that is a way, not the way. We take and customize it based on the needs that we find in a company and what is that's going to be better fit for them so they get the results that they're looking for.
I have a question for both of you.
Sure.
It's kind of off topic a little bit.
Yeah.
I just finished reading an article, and I forget who it was written by. It was a good article, but it talked about why companies need to get paid for their training. I'm oftentimes asked to give keynote addresses, and about a third of the time, they just want me to come and give it to them.
Sure.
And I wish I could, but I just don't have the time for that. So get paid for that. But why companies get paid for it? Have you noticed that the companies who want off-the-shelf product, just pull it off the shelf and give it to us, you don't need to customize it, versus the difference of a company who says, okay, I'm willing to pay for you to customize this. Have you noticed the difference in the leadership in that company even before you get there or before you start to work?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
A very big difference. There's a stark difference because the leadership that wants to truly invest in their people will want to find out what investment is needed first, as opposed to checking off a box.
And we find that there's so many leaders, unfortunately, are checking off boxes that is so infuriating to us because there's more to it. And they just don't, I just read an article myself, actually. It's called, lazy leadership. And it's not just the physical being lazy. It's not that. It's actually being lazy leadership from the sense of, well, it's always been like this. And there's people from above, from a top down, that they know that this may need a little bit more effort to invest in their people, to find out, maybe do a survey, maybe just to talk, just to find out, because there is such a disconnect between, leaders and their employees and the worker bees. There's, don't be fooled and delusional that your workers unless you're actually talking with your managers and leaders on a continual basis.
Meet them where they are.
Meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Meet them where they are.
Yeah, and that's huge. No, that's huge. I think it's very important, and it fits right in. And so the big difference is you see is the results too. Okay, the results shows the difference. Okay, we call anyone who wants to come to us for a quick solution so they can say that they did the training. We call that shelf help. Right?
Yes.
Pull it off the shelf. We give them information. They go about their day, and just like at home, we get a book. It sits on our shelf. We may have read it, but are we learning it? And the same thing happens with that situation. We go in. I'll give a perfect example. This was probably 2.5, 3 years ago. Now we went in and did a training for someone who she had her own business. And she had already had one employee, which was family, and she's expanding. She had hired 3 or 4 more people on, needed to have some onboarding training. When I said, okay, well, let's identify what that onboarding training is. What do you really want them to know about you, your business, and where you're going? And so we incorporated her vision and their mission, and we did communication training. We kind of blended some things in so that we can fit them in and get them on the right foot. And then we said, what you really need to do is have a continuation program, to where as you're growing, you keep the people that are good and continue to feed them And those that come back, we do the same thing. And that's a cycle. We got to continue to grow them, and we can help through that process. Opted just to do the training, just the training alone. Was it 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that? It was great. It was absolutely great. Everyone loved it. They had a great time. Very interactive. And a few months later, I'll say 4 or 5 months later, those employees were no longer there. They all left or were let go. And there she was struggling to find good people. Just as an example of someone who, anyone, if you want to invest, you want to see your business grow, invest in your people, because long term, it's going to save. If she'd have done that, now she's got to do a rehiring process again. That costs a lot of money. It costs millions of dollars a year for companies to do this.
Absolutely does.
And so that's a huge difference between the shelf help leader and someone who really wants to invest in their people.
On your website, you mentioned, by the way, it's loueverettgroup.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, loueverettgroup.com. You mentioned define your agenda. I think you just kind of outlined that a little bit right there. It says, okay, let's maybe do the 360 interview process, and let's go all the way around. Define your agenda. Is that what you meant by that when you said, let's define your agenda, or do you have a different take on it?
Oh, that's a good way to look at it. From a coaching perspective, when we do coaching as well, we allow our coaching clients, we call them partners because we partner with you in your success. And with our partners, along with having that 360 view, we call it the pre-coaching plan. So we come up with a plan after our conversation, whatever they're concerned about, wherever their challenges right now are, and we help kind of look deeper into that process, where they are, to find out what the root is. And then we create a plan around that. So by that, they create that agenda. We guide them in the process. So we say, you create the agenda, meaning you're the one that's leading yourself. We're going to guide you in that direction so that you can attain where you want to attain. So with that 360-degree plan, along with even after that's done, with training, we do the same thing. We do a pre-training plan. Then afterwards we're done. We now have a post-interview, post-survey to say, okay, what went well? What'd you learn from that? And what can we do better moving forward? And that's what we mean there. Anyone that we work with, any partner that we connect with, anyone that we train, anyone that we coach, you define that agenda. Because when you define, we help you, guide you in that process, but you define the agenda of what this looks like for you. What do you want to achieve? We help you determine how to achieve it. But what do you want to achieve? What do you need to overcome? What limiting beliefs do you need to eliminate and release in order to reach and remain in other things that are going to be more successful for you? Then we, in turn, use that and guide you in processes throughout that relationship to attain those goals. So that's what we mean by you defining that agenda.
I want to define a brief piece here of an agenda that I want to define. But before I do that, I got to tell you, I heard Tony Robbins in there, and I heard John Maxwell.
It's all in there. Yeah, it's like Prego spaghetti sauce. It's all in there.
Yeah, but it's great. It's the way it's supposed to be. You can't learn if you don't learn from others.
Right.
So
100%.
The agenda I want to define, though, let's take a look at John Maxwell's book, boy, I hope I don't draw a blank on the title, The 5 Levels of Leadership.
Sure.
Okay. In your 10 core pieces, what would you say would help that person reach that top level where people want to be people see that person's vision, their passion, their mission, they want to be part of it. In your 10 core groups, what would be there? And then also, Mother Teresa, what does she have to provide that would help a leader reach that top level where people want to be part of that passion, that vision, that mission?
It's a great question. In the first principle of the empowerment leadership principles, empowerment in our program doesn't have an E on it. So it's empowerment. It's 10 letters. And each letter stands for a certain type of principle. So the one I believe is one of the most important. Anyone who wants to know more about this, we can go to our website, go to our events. We actually have an ongoing webinar series right now. Each month we have a couple left that lead into this program. So they're free. You can come on to these webinars, next couple, they're no cost to you, and you get a lot out of it. So Go to our events on our website and just register, come in, and you can learn a lot more about these than we might be able to talk about here. But I think that Mother Teresa, and you can correct me what you think, but the number one principle, and it starts right at the top with me, the me principle.
Okay.
It all starts and ends with you as a leader. Everything starts and ends with you. If you don't grow yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to grow anybody else. It's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. So that it starts there for a reason, because that is where it needs to begin. The awareness of a leader, knowing that, oh, I really have to continue to develop myself, because there's no such thing as you've reached the top. There is no such thing as you've reached the top. It takes a lifetime to do that.
Yes.
But it all starts with you. And that me principle is total inclusive about how do I develop myself as a leader, which includes mindset, which includes my habits, which includes how do I think about people? Can I coach people? Can I mentor people? And all throughout these 10 principles, it talks about that. Mentoring, equipping, coaching, leading from within, leading by meeting people where they are. Sounds to me that it's an awful lot like Mother Teresa as well.
Right.
Fits in line with that.
But we have to feed ourselves before we can actually, feed anybody else, if you want to use that analogy. Or, we don't know what we don't know, and you're only limited to lead others by your own limitations.
It's true. You can only give at the limit of your own.
Right.
You can only give at the limit of your own growth.
It's a little confusing to me, because I see Mother Teresa as a giver. I see her doing that first, well beyond her own good, her own health, her own everything she gave first. Yet me says me first. I have to be better. I have to be able to give more.
Sure.
But I know deep down from my own personal growth that you have to have both of them. How do you combine both?
Well, again, I will stand by the fact that it has to start with you. Mother Teresa had to grow herself before she could set the example to help other people. We all have to, right? With her we're using her as an example. She had to nurture her faith. She had to nurture her beliefs. She had to keep herself strong in order to provide that strength to other people. That has to happen first in order for that to happen. A tree has to have roots before it grows the fruit. Okay, that's how we work as people too. Yes, there has to be a balance. The principle doesn't say me first. It says it starts with you and ends with you. Okay, so it starts with you and ends with you, which means everything in between is everything you now get to provide and give based upon your growth.
Are you saying it starts with you and ends with you? In other words, it's your responsibility?
100%. Your responsibility, your burden. It's you that is that your whether your team is successful or they're not. It begins there and it ends there. If somebody on your team is not being successful, what can you do to help? Do you know that they're not being successful? Is it because they're just not a fit? Or is it really because we're not equipping them? And it's up to you as a leader to find that out. Again, going back to you, what is it that I can give to help the situation so that my staff, my team, my people want to come work? Not because they have to, because they want to. Why do they want to? I want them to want to follow me. People wanted to follow Mother Teresa. They want to look at anyone who's been a positive, influential leader, maybe not even in title. People wanted to follow them. Dr. Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, some of these people that we can just go on about. People wanted to follow these people, even when they didn't have a title per se, but because of how influential they were as a leader.
And they were close to their why and their purpose. So that's another key thing too.
And they always worked on themselves with that.
Always worked on themselves with that.
Yeah.
Sherri, talk about that a little bit more. Your why and your purpose.
Yeah. So your why and your purpose is what really is your core. And that's something that I have learned even through my transformation to figure out, especially after being in that dire situation in the hospital, of what is my purpose? What is my why? Where is this? I knew early on that I wanted to help others, but at what capacity, right? And that had to slowly evolve. And I know I wanted to help people, and I know I wanted to help, but it was too broad, right? Well, hey, you know what? if someone told me a year ago that in order to find your why a little bit closer to go to the hospital, I probably would say no.
No, I'm not doing it.
I don't think anybody really want to walk into that or tell it like, hey, by the way. But you know what? Thankfully, I survived. But man, that was a wake up call. And I believe that's in throughout our period of life. If you really look back, I'm sure there's moments where it was a wake up call. Mm-hmm. If it was a crisis situation, or maybe somebody seeing it through someone else, something. I think we all have, if we really think about it, have some type of pivotal moment in our lives that could say, wow, you know what, I need to do something different.
Yeah.
With that. So with that really helped my transformation, dive into personal development, which I should have been doing leading up to it, but I didn't have the time. Well, I had the time then.
Yeah, you had the time then, and now you make the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Now I got to make the time. And I certainly did, and dove in, and I'm like, wow. I was like, now I know, in a business sense, as a leader, of being in these type of leader roles naturally, now I can really talk the talk and walk the walk of like, okay, this needs to change. Mm-hmm. And it all trickles into life too. It's not just about business, but it trickles into life as well. Yeah. Communication, just because you can communicate with your team, there is a communication with your spouse and your family. So all these little tips and tools, as you really dive in, can help all throughout your life to have, I don't say work-life balance, like that's a farce. It's actually harmony, mm-hmm. to have harmony in your life, mm-hmm. and work situation. That is the key thing. And that's something that I've learned through my transformation, that we always talk about work-life balance, and, now it's harmony, mm-hmm. with it. And that gives me more peace than ever before.
Much different take, because everybody, you do hear them say, well, we got to get a work-life balance.
Right.
But yeah, it's the buzzword.
It is. It's
the buzzword, work-life, mm-hmm. balance. And within reason, it makes sense, right? And we can still use that term. But what people are looking for is the harmony. To feel like my work and my life are in harmony with one another.
Right.
Like, what does my empowered future really look like? Where do I really want to go? Okay, and then once you have that vision, then you can identify. Okay, well, that helps you to identify what is my purpose and what is my why. People can get confused too. That's another thing that we think differently on. We're crazy people. Okay, purpose and why are two different things.
Yes, they are
two different things. And I remember somebody asking when I went through this. Okay, I want as a coaching, one of my coaching clients. I says I give them a worksheet. I said, okay, I want you to identify your purpose and your why. And he says, aren't they the same thing? I said, well, if you were to look it up, it probably looks like that, but it's not. It's not. Defining your purpose is in itself a challenge sometimes. In itself, there is a process. What do you love to do? What do people ask you to do a lot of? Do they ask you to teach them on certain things? Do they ask you to fix their computers? Do they ask you, what do people ask you to do the most?
Yes.
And what is it that they're asking you to do the most that you love to do? And so you identify all this. So there's this process where you identify all that stuff to find what your purpose is. You kind of find, oh, like that. I guess that is my purpose. This is what I really love to do, and people love me doing it. And yeah, I like getting paid for it too, or whatever your goal is. So
that's a very good method right there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Lou, but that's a tweetable moment, or whatever you want to call it. That's a very good method. Yeah. What are you being asked to do a lot of that you like doing?
That's it. Because that's really what your purpose is then, right? And then how do you get there? So where's where your why comes in. Why do people ask you to do that? Mm-hmm. Why do you love to do that? How does it make you feel? What are you accomplishing when you do that? Okay, so now you've got your purpose, you've got your why. Now we can come up with a vision. Now where do we take it?
And then as a visual standpoint, you have the why in the middle, right?
Yes.
Right. And then everything around it.
Comes around it, yeah.
And it's just like a clock. The clock is always in the center, and then you have everything around. So think about your why is in the center. And I'm a visual person, so that always helps me.
And that's something we walk through our clients on, whether they're an executive or they're a business owner. That is a process that we walk through, make sure that they're in line, because the reality of it is, and any of your listeners, and I'll talk to you directly here. If you ever have felt like you've been dropped on the island of misfit toys, and you feel out of place, even though you've moved up, even though you might have a high-paying position or a lucrative leadership role, whatever it is, you feel like you should be happy about that, but you're not. You feel like you're not able to make enough headway and really influence the people that you lead as much as you would like to. That you feel like you should be giving more, but you don't know how, or maybe you feel like you've been held back from doing that. That's where we come in. That's where we come in. It's time now at that moment, because you don't know, as Sherri said, you don't know what you don't know. That moment is when you need to reach out to someone like us to say, let's have a conversation. You'll be amazed on what that conversation will look like and how the relationship will completely change how you feel, how you view things, and how you move towards the direction of your newly created empowered future. It can change everything.
Certainly will dump the toxicity out of the workplace as far as your leadership skills go.
That's exactly right.
Right. And it's not a one and done thing for that,
right.
So that's another thing too that needs to be, reminded and told over and over again that
there's no magic button.
No, there's no magic button.
If I had it, we'd give it to y'all.
I know.
It's not about that.
Right. It takes effort. It needs to be intentionality, and it needs to be on a continuum. It's interesting when some leaders, managers think that one conference or one webinar or, a one and done type of situation, like, well, I sent them all there, they should know everything.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for a week, maybe.
Come back, spink and span brand new leaders,
Yeah, it's like, it's not instant. It takes the time. Well, we love the analogy real quick. We love the analogy. It's like, would you give a newborn baby a pizza?
Yeah, I got to give them a piece of ppizza. You can try.
Yeah.
Right?
Not going to be able to digest that. They're not ready.
No. And that's what some leaders in some organizations and, think that. They're just like, let's just cram everything in and then just hope for the best. And unfortunately, that doesn't stick. And it goes right back to the bad habits. And then you're wondering, well, why is everybody, nasty, or they're not communicating, they're not producing. They're
not changing.
So it's that slippery slope. And it takes time.
Time and strategy.
It does take time. One of the folks that you were mentored by, I bet you heard it from him as well. If you haven't read Think and Grow Rich 7 times, you haven't gotten it yet.
That's right.
Yeah. And when you hit the 8th time, you're like, man, I feel like I haven't read it before.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
100% agree to that.
I'm in the 3rd time in my book study to do Think and Grow Rich. It is amazing.
We're considering actually offering that as a mastermind coming up, but we're not sure yet. So, but look out for that. If we do, it'll be on our site. We're considering throwing that out there as a nice, good, refreshing learning experience. Because it's really this
up, and you're going to be sorry you did. You're considering doing that, and you should do that. I'm going to be looking for it, and every now and then I'm going to drop you a line and say, when are you going to do that? But I really want to hold you accountable
Hold us accountable. There you go.
Good.
I want to hold you accountable for something.
Yeah.
There you go.
Where's your book at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the book.
Where's your book at?
Yeah, that's good. Keep doing that. Our book is set to release in September. And when that happens, it's going to be everywhere. So make sure that you keep an eye on social on our site, because it's going to be everywhere. We'll be on a book tour probably the week before. That is the goal. That's what we have set up. And it'll be awesome. We're really looking forward to that. It's going to be exciting because it falls right in line with our program, that Empowerment Leadership Program. And this is what we're calling this book. This is the new leadership playbook, y'all. Okay, the old 1970s edition capitalist view of leadership is long overdue to be ripped up, burned, destroyed. It is time that we realize that it doesn't work anymore, and that we need to recreate that and begin leading with influence. That's what this book is for, and it's going to change the entire dynamics of how leaders look at their role and how it is that they operate and influence the people that they lead.
It is well past that time. Quick story for me. I remember hearing Oh, geez, name loss. Oh, Colin Powell.
Oh,
Talking,
sure, yeah.
and he was talking about the Gulf War.
Mm.
And he said how they planned it, and he was in charge of planning and everything. And General Schwarzkopf came to him and said, "Hey, I think we should do it this way." He knew immediately. I may be your superior, but dude, you know what you're doing? I'm out of the way. I'll follow you.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have to get out of this paradigm of you're the general, I'm the chief of staff, and I'm up 2 rungs above you, so do what I say, and I'm not going to listen to you.
That's right.
Right.
The military's been out of that for a long time.
Exactly.
When do we get out of that as leaders in corporate America?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
When do we get out of that for leaders in corporate America?
Mhm.
If you're going to be a leader in the service branch, I've had the pleasure of being at the West Point and teaching for a couple of days there. It was just amazing how, they knew who the leader was, but the leader never had to come down on them. Hey, would you mind doing this?
Right.
Yes, ma'am, and go do it. They
Right.
knew the ranks, and so does your team.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's just my
Love it.
little story about, because I think what you're saying is really important, that the leader needs to listen, ask the right questions, and read more.
Mhm.
I didn't
Right.
say that, but that's what I'm saying. Read more a little bit.
Read and learn from what they read, right? It's like
Well, apply. That's the
apply,
thing.
learning and
you know.
applying are the big
Good
things.
point.
Yeah.
Good point. Apply.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, because reading. Yeah, that's another topic we could talk about. I met someone at a networking event, and he had said, "Have you ever read this book? You should read this book," because he realized what we do. And I said, "Okay, that sounds great." He goes, "Yeah, it comes with a really cool plan, and you just follow the plan, and you fill out this thing." And I said, "Great." I said, "How did it go for you? Did you do that?" No, I didn't even quite get a chance to finish reading it. Oh,
All right. Yeah.
okay. So, which and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is. But let's when we're reading it, let's learn it and apply it. Let's see what it is that we have to do to apply what it is that we're reading. If that is something that is a fit for what it is that we're wanting to do. And you make a very valid point about leadership there, especially when it comes to the military. You saw, and anyone who's been in the military will tell you this. We have some really solid connections. One gentleman who just wrote a book about his. And correlates his experience as a submarine in the Navy, being a submariner in the Navy, to leadership. And everything that you see from the outside is different, right? Because they're positional. They have positional titles. But nobody in the position of leadership in the military has not done what their subordinates have done. They've all done the same thing. They've all worked their way in. They're not asking people to do something they haven't done. None of that. And you see, as leaders, we don't really have that option sometimes, right? In corporate leadership. So we need to respect that and understand that. On a side note, with leadership, you don't have to be in a position in order to influence other people as a leader.
No, you don't have to have the title to influence.
Not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, peers can influence one another on that level where people want to follow you, right? They want to be around you. They want to follow you because you're performing, you're influencing them in a positive way. You're setting an example. You're helping them. You're nourishing them. You're coaching them. Even though you don't have to do that, they don't have to listen to you, but they do because they want to. You see, that is one of the highest forms of leadership. Positional style leadership is actually the lowest form. That is the lowest form of the leadership. When I use a leadership compass as an example here, but that is the lowest form is positional leadership because they're leading down. That's the southernmost point of a compass is south. That is the lowest form. Then you've got peer-to-peer leadership, right? Influencing one another. But the highest form of leadership is when you lead up. When you can lead without position, and those that are quote unquote above you in the leadership level, even though you don't have a position, want to follow you and listen to you because of how you've impacted and influenced other people around you. That is the highest form of leadership. That's where we need to flip. That's where the flip of the switch has to happen, and we got to happen now. And that's where our book comes in.
See, can't wait for that. Can't wait for that. Quick side note: if you're on a book tour, get to San Antonio in September, and maybe we can do this again, and
All
we'll
right.
do it live. I think can't remember the date right now, but I'm speaking in San Antonio, so you guys will get a book tour there too. So it'll be good.
All right.
We can
Yeah.
do that.
That sounds awesome.
This leadership thing, it's an art. It's a science. I mean, you got to pound away at the craft of being a leader.
Right.
And it takes a whole bunch of things. Like I noticed on your website, you have a Tuesday quote, I think it is. A weekly Tuesday quote, or is it a monthly motivational quote?
Tuesday, weekly.
Give me your favorite one off of that.
Oh boy, that's tough because we pick all our favorites for this.
I know.
We pick all of our favorites for that.
Well,
Mine is I always have it in front of me. So one of them is leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's one that I always love. And another one is you're braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think.
It's true.
So I always have those in front of me. That's why I'm looking, because they're always in front of me.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lou, do you have one that stands out? Maybe it's not your favorite because, like I said, you pick them because they are your favorite. Do you have one that kind of stands out?
Well, James Allen.
Oh,
James Allen's got some there. Boy, but I want to go with this one though. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend most time with. That's a quote from oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank now. Jim Rohn.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn.
That's one of my. I use that one a lot because it's so true. It's so
Is it Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar?
Well, I'm sure Zig also quoted it at some point, but that's I believe is a Jim Rohn quote. Yeah.
Okay.
But I might be wrong. It's possible. I've been.
I'm the one who's probably guessing, but it's probably Jim Rohn.
Yeah, it's but and so that one's a big one for me. As a man thinketh, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, it's just that's another book, by the way. What is it? 99 pages long.
Yeah.
As a man thinketh.
That's a deep one, but that's practical.
Get it?
That was impactful.
That's one that may be a little bit tough to read. By the time you read it the third time, you kind of have it.
Right.
Yes.
You got to read it more than that to get it. But as you thinketh, so it is.
Yes.
Think about all the material throughout the last 5,000 years that points in that direction.
100%. Yeah, and you're right. It's like 99 pages or 96 pages, whatever it is, but it's deep. And I would recommend when you read it at a couple of paragraphs and let it percolate, and then go back to the next page or two.
Where were you 20 years ago when I first read this?
I tried doing it that way when I first got. Well, I was saying it bad. I was like, no, hold on. Let me go back. Let me just do this different, because every sentence is powerful.
It is. It really is. It really is. I would agree with that. So we'll talk about James Allen as a man thinketh. What other book would you recommend?
I would say, there's ones that were Leadership 2.0, Leader Shift. These are both John Maxwell.
Well, my favorite, honestly, is I always recommend this on personal development is the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth.
It's a great book.
And that is by John Maxwell. That I highly recommend because it gives you a really great blueprint of every single chapter of that. And the good thing about that is that you can literally you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can go wherever.
Yeah, whatever chapter speaks to you.
Yeah, whatever chapter speaks with you. And each time you read it, we've done multiple masterminds on that particular book. And each time that we have done it has pulled out something different each time. Very similar to Think and Grow Rich. I've been 3 book studies with it. And each time something new or something that pops out. And I'm like, why? How did I miss that the first time? So I think that's a really good one.
It is a great one. That's fantastic for personal growth. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Fantastic book, especially with the 4 quadrants. I mean, we use that frequently. Compound Effect is great.
That's actually a really good. That actually does have.
What was that? What was the last one?
Compound.
The Compound Effect.
Oh, Darren Hardy.
Yes.
Yes. That's got a really good, especially if you like charts and a path and a to-do list and a plan. I mean, if you really follow it, You know, you
it's
can,
good.
it's really good. Has everything that you need.
Yeah, he is good. I went to one of his workshops before we got shut down. Well, this 2017, I believe, that in La Jolla. Powerful mentor. Just amazing. And I hadn't read his book yet. So after I got home from that workshop, I picked up the book and I read it and said, the workshop was, to be honest, 10 times better than the book, but the book was really good.
I can imagine.
Really good. You gave me a motivational quote, but I want to ask you, what question should I have asked you that I didn't ask you?
That's a good one. What question should you have asked that you didn't ask? Well, here's one. What is our purpose? What is it that we want to do? Why do we do what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your purpose and why do you do what you want to do? I just asked.
I like that. Well, we have our tagline, and our mission is to transform today's leaders, right? But
yes,
but there's a big value behind that. As you heard Sherri's story about her near-death experience, and what we went through there was just something that we don't want anybody ever to have to go through. But it even stems deeper than that. Our reason and our purpose is to give what we have from our experience and our knowledge and our training so that we can save a company and a person time, resources, and frankly, other people to help them become solid leaders in whatever it is that it is, whether it's their own business, whether they're in a position of leadership or they're wanting to move up and they just need some coaching and direction on how to do that effectively. We want, and our purpose is to transform the thinking of people by our methods, by our experiences, and by what we've learned in providing that to them so they can skip the line. Without having to, we're all going to fail. They're going to fail. You're going to fail in everything that you try to do.
Yes.
But imagine if you had a roadmap. When you failed, you can get back up, get back on the roadmap. But if you're failing without a roadmap, it's like getting in your car and driving across the country without a GPS or a road atlas when I grew up. You're just hoping you're going to make it there by people that you might run into. We need our own internal GPS, and we want to provide that GPS for you and for those leaders and those that want to make a difference and a change in their life to be able to influence and impact other people in a way that is not just going to change those people that they're influencing, but will completely redirect the purpose of their life as well. That is our purpose, and that is the reason we do what we do, because we didn't have a roadmap. Most leaders don't have one. Some have good examples, others do not. Some have toolboxes that have been created for them that have equipped them, but never showed them how to use the tools. Right? Yes. We want to show you how to use those tools.
Yep. And unfortunately, we're still promoting people because they have done a good job in the previous position.
Right.
Not that they're good leaders.
It's true. That's a very good point, right? We promote based on performance. We've seen it. I've been that promoted person.
Me too. I mean, thankfully we both had in our own situations, had some leadership skills, but I can't really tell you an opportunity in all the careers I've had or job opportunities of like, hey, you know what? Let's give you some extra training, or let's start equipping you on a leadership type course or conference or, nothing of that sort.
Coaching.
Or mentoring, I mean, the coach or anything was always my direct manager and so forth, but they were just as lousy as the people on top, to be honest.
They're just lost. They didn't have that formal training.
Right. They didn't have it themselves. So they can, they're only limited. They're always limited. They were only giving as they're at their limit. Anything beyond that, it was just capped off.
Right.
So there's very few companies that have that yes, you can put people back in training, but this goes beyond that. This is an ongoing thing that should be incorporated in all corporations, even if it's as a like an on-call trainer. Instead of actually having a trainer department necessarily, because we know when things get lean, training gets nixed, and that's usually the first department that gets canned. It just does, and we get that.
And then HR is responsible for training,
for everything, right?
And then next thing you know, HR is responsible to train new leaders. It's like, well, wait a second, they're like, all right, well then they get a cookie cutter, in a box kind of a computer-based training, CBT training. Go through these 2 hours, and you've got your leadership training, right? Because that's all they have bandwidth for.
Mm-hmm.
That's all, because they're busy keeping up on the regulations and everything like that. And it hurts them.
Right.
And it hurts the company long-term.
That's
anyway.
right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So promoting based on performance. You got a 30-70 shot of it working out without any kind of development, right?
Make that hard, huh?
Yeah, if it even is, right? And so it's just imperative that you select the right people, and you have something in place. What is generally known as succession planning, right? You're planning a succession of your company. Who's going to take over your job as a leader? Mm-hmm. That's a question you have to ask yourself as a leader.
And you do want that.
Because you want that to happen. You're not going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a time. Who do you want to take over that spot?
And who do you want to take over that spot when you get promoted to the next spot?
Right.
Exactly.
And so forth. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's just the way that's got to be. I heard it expressed one day, and I said, this makes sense for groups like yours as not training anymore, as working on the craft.
Yeah. As
the apprenticeship of the craft of being a leader.
Right. Yeah. Development. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like it.
So
that's what it is. It's leadership is learned. This whole concept of a natural born leader doesn't exist. People might have characteristics of be, that would be great if as a leader because it's good characteristics. But if you don't sharpen those characteristics, it can be used wrong or not used at all.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so those all got to be honed in. So leadership is learned, and it's something that's learned over a lifetime. There's never a completed date.
Yeah.
There's no date of completion. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just say I noticed that a lot of when you talk to people who say that they were natural born leaders, if you talk to them, you realize, wait a minute, you got that from Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts.
That's right.
You started that when you were 5 years old.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you're in your 30s or 40s, yeah, it feels like it's natural. You're a natural born leader. That's just the way I am. But thank you way back then.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's when you started that training.
Yep.
I want to talk a little while longer, but I've got to be respectful of your time. But I do want to just ask you to share with everybody here how they can get a hold of you. Okay. And I'm going to say this is off the top, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. If you're interested in shelf learning, don't call them.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
If you want something off the shelf, you got plenty of these contract companies that will run around and train you with their little books that they already have. Mm-hmm. You got plenty of those. Mm-hmm. But if you're interested in working on your art and craft, pounding away on that, how do they get a hold of you?
Yep, they can reach out to us right on our website, loueverettgroup.com. We are on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram. So feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation. Mm-hmm. That's what we love to do. We love to have a conversation and see where you're at and see how we can help. That's exactly what we do. Yep. If it's not us, we know somebody in our network. We have lots of wonderful people in our network.
Yeah.
Somebody's
go to Google, look us up. We're all over Google too. So just type in our name. We're everywhere. Phone number is on the site. There's a way to set up a time to meet with us directly on a one-on-one situation. So feel free to reach out. We'd love to help.
Explain to me how Instagram works, but okay. I'm good at all that other stuff, but Instagram's kind of hard. So my last question for you.
Sure.
We've been on together for a little bit more than an hour. What is the top thing that people should take away from this? So when you say it, they don't get it, they know they got to go back and find it. What's the top 1, 2, or 3 things that they should take away from our conversation today?
Yeah. Number one, it all starts and ends with you. It's your responsibility as a leader or someone who wants to be a leader, an influential leader, to take that responsibility to grow and to learn. Right? It's like a tree or a plant. And we're the only humans. We're the only species, the only living thing that purposely stunts our own growth. There's nothing else that does it. Trees, animals don't do that. We do it. It's because we don't want to accept the fact that we have to grow. You can only give at the limit of your own growth. So it all starts with you. That's one thing I want to make sure people understand.
Number 2 about leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And you can influence. It doesn't matter about your title, doesn't matter about your position. You can influence right where you are. If you're a mom, dad, worker, I mean, it doesn't matter. You can influence your the people around you, and to be intentional of who you have around you.
And number 3, if you're stuck, we've been there. Just reach out to us. Now you know how. Now you know how to reach out to us. I'll guarantee you reach out with the intent of being unstuck, it'll happen. That's what we do.
Perfect. You guys, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad that you agreed to come on. I know your time is valuable. It's important. A lot of good learning. So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you for having us.
Thank
and
you.
And everyone, thank you for listening. Appreciate it.